Yo, what's going on, Mathmech players? Today I actually wanted to revisit a topic that I have covered in the past, but judging by some comments that I've read recently, I think it's very clear that I haven't done a very good job. And as a justice to you guys, I do want to go through it again, but this time I've actually planned it a lot better. Now, from reviewing the actual footage myself, so the footage I'm referring to is how to build Mathmech, like the deck building 101, right? I feel a lot of the tips I gave in there, a lot of them were useful, but a lot of them didn't highlight the point that I was trying to get across. And I think a little bit of confusion has been caused by this, and I just wanted to clear that up here. So what I'm going to do in this video, I'm going to keep it very short and brief as much as possible. So the way I'm laying it out is, with deck building, everything is about consistency, and there are so many ways to play Mathmech. I just tend to play a very, very controversial way. So as context, let's just go to the deck list that I had for, well, this season, so season 23. Now, this is not the deck list firstly I'm going to be using in season 24. Now, if you saw my last video in the ban list, you'll see what I did use for what I am planning to use for season 24, and I'll make changes where I see fit. But if we just do a quick analysis of this deck, I mean, in short, it's a fucking mess. Like, there are so many one-off cards, there are so many random cards that wouldn't be really considered in a Mathmech deck. This is more Code-Talker stuff, but this worked for me. Like, it got me to Master 1, and the reason why I don't want to highlight that too much is because I don't want you guys copying this deck and then being disappointed with the results. This is just what worked for me. But judging by the consistency of it, I can completely understand why someone who copies this deck doesn't do very well. So going forward, I'm going to make sure that if I am promoting a deck, it's something that's a lot more consistent. So forget this deck. It's complete arse. I don't want you to copy it and then have bad results. The fact that it gave me good results is nothing short of luck. So I apologize if you have actually copied this deck list and tried it out, because it's not what I promote. Because when you look at it and actually analyze it properly, yeah, one-ofs is one problem, but the other problem is I have two support lines to Mathmech. So I've got the Code-Talker stuff here, as well as the Firewall stuff. And realistically, if you're going to play both, then you really need to have more consistencies with like 2 silent mining, none of this, maybe more imperm, and that way at least it will work out a little bit. Like, this already looks a lot more consistent if you're going to play 2 supporting lines. So, but that's not my deck list, so I am going to discard those changes because I like to keep them as to how I actually got to Master 1. Now, before I actually get into the video, so what we are going to do together is, so this is the season 24 deck list that I have planned, that I'm going to start with on December 1st and then make changes where I see fit. But what we're going to do is, there are 4 different ways to play Mathmech, and we're going to make changes so that this deck list actually reflects those 4 ways, and then you can make a calculated decision by yourself as to which one you are most comfortable playing with. So the 4 are as follows. It's pure Mathmech, so actually pure Mathmech, how they play it in the TCG. Mathmech with the spirit line, so the support of the spirit monsters, so Sakitama, Nikitama, Aratama. It depends how you want to play it, but I'll show you the best variation in my opinion. And then you've got the Firewall support, as well as the Code-Talker support. So that is 4 separate variations of Mathmech. The one I play is obviously just a blend of 2 of them. Now, I don't recommend that if you're really going for consistency, but look, if you want to try it, then do it. It's worked for me. But of course, cards like this will cut. We're gonna cut out the floodgates, and Triple Tactics is optional. Great card, but if you're looking for true consistency, then you are going to want a lot of replicated cards to get rid of Multiplication, Nabla, and then place 3 Small World. Maybe even get rid of Red Reboot if you don't want it, and then that way we can work in with some more, consistency, and maybe even a 3rd Maxi, just to make sure you're guaranteeing that. So look, if we just add Small World just for the sake of having it visual, and there we, third one. So, and that already looks a lot more consistent, right? Now, what I'm going to do as well, straight after we go through the actual deck list, each one by one, and build it together, I'm going to explain the best end board for each particular deck list. That way you understand what you're aiming for with each variation of Mathmech, because not all of them are going to be aiming for the same thing. And of course, if you're not playing the Silent Conflict line, then you're not going to aim for this at all. And let's say, for example, if you're playing the Firewall support and not the Silent Conflict, then you do want to try and get Singularity on board. It's a very strong card this season. I just don't play it because I love this card so much. So to me, I prefer this rather than Singularity, but that is a complete preference point, and I'll even show the combos if you need to. But right now, let's go through the deck list together, build each one bit by bit, and then I'll show you the actual end boards that you want to build with each respective one. So I'll see you there. Jumping into the first variation, we're going to look at pure Mathmech. So we're going to get rid of the Code-Talker bodies here, so Code Generator, Microcoder, Silent Conflict, as well as the Firewall bodies, so all Defensor, Guardian, and then get rid of the Floodgate as well as Triple Tactics. Now we have a lot of room to work with here. We'll also get rid of, now this is optional, you don't have to get rid of Multiplication because it is nice to send off of Terahertz, but this is a very bricky card. So for the sake of consistency, I will cut this out. And we will keep Nabla in for now, but that is also another card that you can cut out. So what we're going to do is first is double up on the Mathmech bodies. Now, diameter does have to stay at 1, guys, because of the ban list being implemented soon. So I'm not going to change that. But we got 2 of every single body, 3 of circular as always. And look at that. We can start adding in small world. We're going to need 3 copies of that. Now, the point of pure Mathmech is to have as many hand traps as possible. So we're going to get rid of Dotscaper. Now, originally we would have Dotscaper as a bridge for small world. But what we're going to do is get rid of Droll and Lockbird and add 3 Effect Veiler. Now, your small world bridge to get to circular or diameter is to go through Nibiru or Effect Veiler. That way you can, that is your bridge, and essentially, so you can banish this from hand or this from hand, and then banish the other respective one from the deck face down, and then you can grab circular or diameter because they're both light. Or Sigma, but I doubt you're really going to be in that situation. So that's pretty much what you're going to be doing with your small world bridges. Now, we still have 4 spaces here, guys, so we're going to have a 3rd maxi because it never hurts to have that many. And we're going to add 1 more hand trap. So go spell. And do we have room for anything else? What's 1 more? We can get rid of the red reboot and then play 2 more invo. And then look at that. That is a very consistent deck list going forward. And again, Nabla is a flex spot. So you can always cut this and then put in the, where is it? Red reboot. Where'd it go? Oh, I'm so blind. Here we go. And look, there we go. Consistency again, and then a little bit of preparation for the OTK going forward. So your ideal end board for pure Mathmech will be Terahertz in the extra monster zone with Heat Soul, which is conveniently not here. Sorry about this. And then you'll have Super Factorial with the 3 bodies for Laplation for the following turn. And ideally, diameter should be one of them. But again, with this card being cut to 1, if you can't get it in the graveyard, it's not the end of the world. You do just lose a interruption from it. So this is 4 guaranteed interruptions. So 2 from Super Factorial because Laplation having board removal and a hand rip as well as an Omnigate, that's 2. And then Terahertz sending Disable in the first turn as well as Aggregator in the following turn if you time it correctly. Now that's 4 guaranteed on the most optimal end board, guys. And then the whole point of Mathmech, like I said, is to draw into your hand traps. So ideally with Heat Soul, you're going to try and draw into Ghost Spell, Effect Veiler. Maxi is probably one of the best one. Maxi is probably one of the best ones, as well as Ash. It really just depends on the deck you're playing against. Now, Mathmech, I think Effect Veiler and Ghost Spell are the best. But, of course, with heavy combo decks, no one wants to play against Maxi because, well, at the end of the day, if you can't play through the round and your opponent has all this card economy, you may as well scoot because, yeah, they're just going to rip you apart like limb from limb. So, yeah, but that's pretty much Mathmech as a pure variation explained. Now, you can make a few changes here and there, but I would say this is the best variation going forward. Now, why don't we move on to, was it the Spirit line? Yeah, we'll move on to Mathmech Spirits, and then I can explain a few combos from there. Now, Mathmech with the Spirit line being our second variation, I'm going to cut the Code-Talker stuff. Again, I think it's just best to show you from a reset position how we're changing the deck together. So, get rid of all the Firewall support, add Max C again, and it's pretty similar to pure Mathmech. The only idea is that you are adding in the Spirit monster. So, Sakitama is by far the best one because if you draw 2 of this card, you can normal summon one, and then by its own effect, it can just normal summon the other one. So you are still in a great position to get into your Alan Version plays. Now, the reason why the Spirit line has, a separate variation linked, and I don't just say pure Mathmech alongside it, is because you can actually go into a second Laplation on your first turn, and I almost recommend it because if you're able to play through certain hand traps like Ash and Imperm, and still build your Super Factorial with your diameter in the graveyard as well as Terahertz and Disable, honestly, it hurts nothing but your opponent to rip an extra card from their hand in the first turn, giving them less cards to work with. And who knows, you might snipe a card that gives you information about what you're playing against, and that can be quite a big thing when you're playing against decks like Labyrinth, because you can even set up a Lingaribo and then that Coup Clock strat is fucked. Like, they're not going to do it because they can't afford for Lingaribo to banish their big Welcome or Welcome Labyrinth, because ideally they want to keep those cards at least in the graveyard so they can be recycled. But either way, that's pretty much why you want to play a second Laplation. And then I don't have Heat Soul again, but you would play Heat Soul. So let's build the board as is. So we're going to have Small World yet again. Now we're going to have a little bit less hand traps because this isn't so hand trap heavy. It's more about being able to build Alan Version regardless of the materials that you start with. So we have this, we have 2 more of this. And like I did before, we're going to go 3 Effect Veiler. And we still have space. Now you can play the other Spirit line. So if I just put Tama, we can see the other bodies. And now you can play either 2 Aratama or 1 Aratama with Nikitama, because by their own effects, they will help you get the level 4 bodies onto the field as easily as possible. We can get rid of this, add another one. And then this is pretty decent. I'd say there's a fair bit of consistency in this. You still got all your hand traps. But again, look, this is optional. You can just play Sakitama, get rid of these 3, and then go back to having 2 of these. And that way, at least you have this in place. And then maybe, what about red reboot? So if I get rid of this, find red reboot again. I know where it is now, so I shouldn't be lost. And then look, again, another consistent deck just with the simple application of Sakitama. And now the only difference between this and pure Mathmech, like I said before, is you will more likely have the ability to make Laplation in your first turn, rip a card from your opponent's hand, and then go into the rest of your combo, which is Terahertz, Heat Soul, again, apologies for this, and then Super Factorial with Diameter as one of the 3 bodies for Laplation. And that way, as long as you can play through certain hand traps against your opponent and then rip another card from their hand, they're very likely to scoop. Now, if they don't scoop, it means that they definitely have something that is worth playing against you, because in a best of 1, if you're not able to win, there is really no point you staying. And I think the higher up the ranks you go, the quicker people kind of scoop because they realize they can't play through it. Now, I don't recommend scooping immediately. Sometimes you can get super lucky and your opponent misplays, but that is just the average game state of, you know, Master Duel in general. So this is the Spirit line. Why don't we move straight on to the Firewall support, and then we'll finish off with the Code-Talker. Now for Firewall Mathmech, guys. So, or Mathmech Firewall, however you want to phrase it. So let's get rid of the Code-Talker support because it's not the relevant focus here. We will also get rid of Dartscaper just for this particular scenario. Get rid of Floodgates and Triple Tactics. What else can go? We are going to get rid of Multiplication because we're talking about consistency here, guys. Now, I am going to have to keep Nabla in because let's say you're trying to make Alan Bershin through Defensor and Guardian through Defensor's 1-card combo. You need Nabla to actually confirm the 3 bodies for Circular. Now, of course, if you have an extender in hand, like let's say you have Addition in hand, you can just send Diameter to the graveyard by the effect of Circular, Special Summon, Addition, like I said in the example, and then of course you can get Super Factorial for that way, and that way you don't have to use Alan Bershin's ability to bring back Nabla tribute itself to get Diameter, and there's a little bit of risk involved in that because Circular will send Diameter to the graveyard for cost. So if you do have an extender, of course, just send this to the graveyard, but if you don't, and again this is a contingency, you will have to send Nabla to the graveyard, and that's why we play it, just the backup lines, just in case, right? So let's see here, what have we got? So we have quite a bit of space here. Let's make sure we fill up everything here. So 3 Small World, very standard. Go 2 more of this, and then what else have we got here? 1 more Maxi, of course, and then what can we put for the last one? Oh, I'm not sure actually. We have quite a bit. We can go triple for this. Actually, no. What am I saying? We go triple Vela because that is the Mathmech way. Now, looking at this deck list, it may seem very simple, but because of Defensor, we have way more 1-card combos now, and because of Defensor, we have more extensions to go into the much larger combos that this deck can provide. So just quickly, I'm going to add Code-Talker there, Heat Soul, and then I'm going to add Singularity. So an ideal end board, like the most optimal end board in my opinion, is to have Singularity in the extra monster zone, and then having Terahertz co-linked behind it, as well as Super Factorial on the field. Now there's a multitude of factors as to why this is so strong, but the obvious one is just the fact that Singularity can just bounce cards. But the issue is that this can only bounce up to 2 cards. And when I say up to 2, it really depends on having Disabler in the graveyard. Now, common play is to obviously have this in the graveyard. But if you have to banish Disabler to use its effects, because it banishes itself to negate a spell or trap, now Singularity can only bounce 1 card, which isn't a problem. It's still very strong, but the more interruptions, the better. So ideally, you want to have more ways to disrupt your opponent, and 1 bounce sometimes just isn't enough, especially with Labyrinth. If they've got like 4 set back row, you want to be able to get rid of all of them, but unfortunately if you only have 1 bounce, you have to try and choose the one that is going to be most effective, and it's always a guessing game. So yeah, having Singularity on board with Terahertz is amazing. And a little tip for Singularity, which I find absolutely fascinating. So because this is going to be in the extra monster zone, let's say your opponent, I don't know, special summons Fenrir to this zone here that it's pointing to. Wait, can you see my cursor? Yeah, you can. So let's say they've got Fenrir special summon here. Now, it doesn't matter how Fenrir leaves the field. You can use Laplation, remove it, or they can exease, it off into a monster. Because the monster has left the zone that Singularity is pointed to, it will trigger its effect, and now we can bring back a Cyberse monster. Now, I recommend that you bring back Transcode, because this is going to be very key into climbing into your Singularity as well as Dark Fluid. And then that way you can actually co-link it with Terahertz and just protect it from card effects. It's just a very simple thing, very helpful. And then the following turn, you can either make access code or you can do whatever really, because at that point, I'm pretty sure you're going to win the game, because you just have so much to work with, and having Singularity being able to bounce cards in the end phase, just ridiculous. Like, you can let your opponent sort of, you know, struggle through Laplation, because Laplation is the real threat of board removal, and then in the end phase, if they try to set anything, yeah, just bounce it, and it literally next turn not going to be an issue. And then Singularity, of course, is amazing for Bestials, because once you're attacking into your opponent directly and then they summon a Bestial, usually that stops the OTK, but with Singularity we can just bounce it back to hand and they can't just special summon themselves again. But again, this very much depends on how many Bestials they have in hand. If it's a 1-for-1, then we're okay, but if they have 2 and you don't have Desave them in the graveyard anymore, then it's a bit of a struggle and they will unfortunately slow you down again. So just one of those things to look out for. But that's pretty much Firewall Mathmech. Let's move straight on to Code-Talker Mathmech and then we'll conclude it there. Okay, so now for my favorite form of Mathmech, and I'm not going to lie, I'm very biased there, and it's all because of one card, and it's always going to be Silent Conflict. So we're going to get rid of the Firewall support so we can actually display the Code-Talker support a lot better. So let's get rid of, again, the floodgates, everything else, and let's see, you know, add Max C, get rid of this. And remember, I'm only building what I think is a very consistent deck list. I will always prefer Droll and Lockbird, but I have noticed in the comments, some people prefer Effect Veiler. And a lot of Mathmech players play Effect Veiler over Droll anyway, so I completely get that. That's just a preference point for me, so that's why I'm putting Effect Veiler here. So let's have a look. Where do we have Small World here? We have 3 of these now. We don't have a lot of space left. Now, with the Code-Talker support, I wouldn't play Code Generator if you're looking for straight consistency. I would play 2 Microcoder. You can even play a 3rd, wouldn't be the worst thing. Now, because we have Small World and Dotscaper, we now have a bridge to get into Microcoder. We can literally banish Dotscaper as well as, I don't know, Subtraction from your main deck and then get Microcoder and continue your play. Or of course you can banish Dotscaper, Parallel Exceed, and then get into Mathmech Circular, because these are just great bridges to get into not only your starters but your combo extenders from there. Now, I don't need to explain too much about a lot of the deck building here. The idea is that you want Microcoder. It's the most important Code-Talker monster. That's why we're not playing any of the others. Like, if you look at the list of how many Code-Talker monsters there actually are, you don't need any of these. There are really cool combinations that you can make with them, especially Silent Codec, but if you're looking for Mathmech with Microcoder, Mathmech with Code-Talker, I think this is the best way to play it. Of course, cut this, maybe play another addition, maybe even cut this, play another subtraction, and look, we have a little bit more consistency here just to make sure we get our Mathmech line secured, as well as our Silent Conflict line. So the ideal end board here will always be Terahertz, Super Factorial, with a Code-Talker monster on board, and I'll touch on that in a second, and then Silent Conflict. Now, with Super Factorial, again, 2 interruptions, as I explained earlier, 2 interruptions from Terahertz, and then a 5th interruption from Silent Conflict. Now, referring to what I was talking about with the Code-Talker, it doesn't matter which one precisely. Now, this is a preference point. So you can play, let's get rid of Transcode just for a second. You do want Transcode, by the way, I just want to highlight. Actually, I don't even need to get rid of it, I'll just keep it here. Now, you can make the choice between Heat Soul. So a lot of players like to draw into more hand traps. That's absolutely fine. That's, again, a preference point. But for myself, I do prefer Protect Code for a number of reasons. Number one is when you draw into Silent Conflict, not in your starting hand, but through the effects of Microcoder, your opponent now knows you have Silent Conflict. So it's something for them to anticipate. And from reading the card effects, because remember guys, a lot of people still read the cards. So unlike myself, I tend to fall into like certain traps because I just am too lazy to read, especially Pendulum, because I lose to Pendulum all the time because I just don't read the cards. But don't do what I do what I say. Now with Protect Code, the reason why I like it so much is because of 2 reasons. One, it protects Terahertz from card effects. It cannot be targeted by card effects whilst this is face up on the field. And like I was saying with Silent Conflict, a lot of my replays show how my opponent will attack into Protect Code to get rid of it. I let them do that because Protect Code's second effect just allows it to special summon itself, and it's a quick effect, so it doesn't matter when, as long as you have link materials in the graveyard that will, you know, equal exactly 3. So you can either banish Code-Talker, or if you've made it through, you know, various materials, Linkaribo and Splash Mage, just banish those 2. This comes back, and then Silent Conflict is now live again, and that's the whole reason they're getting rid of the Code-Talker monster in the first place. And then that way they've actually lost their battle phase. So it's happened so many times where Fenrir will be special summoned, and I've already used my Laplation. Sorry, no, what am I talking about? Fenrir will be special summoned. I will use Terahertz effect to send Aggregator, negate Fenrir, and now they'll go straight into battle phase to get rid of my Protect Code. And then once they do that, you know, I lose 100 life points, who cares? bring back protect code. Now they've lost the battle phase, and I still have super factorial to completely rip apart their board. And then, yeah, it's pretty much like wrecking havoc from there. Like, they don't have any additional plays. So for me, this is my favorite way to play Mathmech. Now, obviously, I have my respective deck lists, but if you're going to play Mathmech with Code-Talker, I would say this is the best way to play it. Just going to double check, make sure I've not doubled on any cards. You don't have to play Red Reboot. It is one of those one-of cards. You can play another, you know, Infinite Impermanence. Nothing wrong with starting with this with your opening hand, because, yeah, it's just a great interruption. So this is pretty much the best way I would say Code-Talker Mathmech goes, and I've already explained the end board. So there's not really much else to explain. You can always change out cards as you see fit. You don't have to play Effect Veiler. You can play Droll like me, or you can play this. Now, I just got rid of Dotscaper mistakenly. There we go. And then you can also get rid of one of these if you want. Like, the choice is yours, guys. It's just how you feel comfortable playing, what you feel adds more consistency, and how you kind of see yourself playing Mathmech in the future. Like, this also very, very consistent. So I'm just going to wrap it up and go into the conclusion, and then I'll see you guys right there. Right, so guys, to conclude the video, I just thought we could summarize the points that we've actually gone through together. So to start, there are 4 ways to play Mathmech. There's pure Mathmech, which I like to call TCG. There's the Spirit Line Mathmech, Firewall Mathmech, and then Code-Talker Mathmech. So starting with pure Mathmech, the idea is that you have multiple copies of each Mathmech body, no other support system, and then just having a bunch of hand traps, because you're going to end with Terahertz, Super Factorial, and then Heat Soul. Now with Spirit Line Mathmech, the only difference between the TCG Mathmech that I just described as well as the Spirit Line is that because of, you know, the actual spirit support monsters, so Sakitama, Nikitama, Aratama, you're more likely to get those level 4 bodies onto the board, and you'll have a lot more possibilities to get into a second Laplation on the first turn. So you'll be able to, you know, rip an additional card out your opponent's hand, which is always a benefit, guys. The only time that would really suck is if it's Tearlaments, and because we're not in a Tearlament heavy format, take the gamble. Like, honestly, against Mathmech players, because at the minute Firewall is so popular, they're literally, it's nothing but beneficial to rip out, I don't know, a circular from your opponent's hand, because it's now useless. Like, what are they going to do? Like, unless they have Equation in hand, then they ain't getting that back. So you're in a very good spot. Now, that's pretty much the Spirit Line. The end board will be the same: Terahertz, Heat Soul, and Super Factorial, but it won't be as hand trap heavy. So the objective is slightly different. I suppose the objective is to have that second Laplation, but of course, still play a lot of hand traps, just not as many as the first pure Mathmech decklist as I described. Or make room for it. Again, completely up to you. Now, the third version is Firewall Mathmech. Now, Firewall actually brings so many possibilities to develop a stronger end board. So having Singularity in the extra monster zone co-linked with Terahertz and then Super Factorial set, that is your ideal end board, and it's just fantastic. Like, Singularity can just bounce cards, Terahertz just has double interruption, and then Super Factorial, again, double interruption. So a fantastic end board, and Singularity is just great for bringing back transcode if something leaves any of the 3 zones that it points to in your opponent's field. So you're pretty much setting up interruptions on accident. So what a fantastic card. And I may even consider playing the future myself, but right now we're going to move on to the Code-Talker stuff, because again, very, very biased, I know, but I love the Silent Conflict line. For me, this is the best way to play Mathmech, because the ideal end board is to have Terahertz, Super Factorial, a Code-Talker monster. I prefer Protect Code, but you can have Heat Soul to draw into more hand traps, fine. And then, of course, Silent Conflict. And that's 5 interruptions. And that's just amazing, because Silent Conflict will, by all means, protect your Super Factorial no matter what. Disable and protects your Super Factorial from, like, Call by the Grave. But against, like, a Bestial, which is a huge threat to Mathmech at the minute, and always will be. If your opponent has a Bestial, then, yeah, that really, really sucks for Mathmech, because, yeah, we just have so many light and dark monsters, and, you know, Diameter in particular going to 1. If that gets banished, then we lose that second interruption. So having something like Silent Conflict, and as long as they haven't, you know, gotten Bestials in their starting hand, we should be fine. So yeah, I like Silent Conflict the most. It can't be responded to, and in my opinion, it's the best way to play Mathmech. But you've seen my deck list. As a quick little revisit, we can show it one last time. And this is the original copy, as you can see, Mathmech Season 24. But again, I will make changes where I see fit, and then I will present my finding as to how they've gone well for me. So I'm going to wrap up the video there, guys. But look, if you have any other questions, please let me know. I've tried to make this as brief as possible and as clear as possible. But again, sometimes questions slip through the cracks, and I'm more than happy to take the time to answer them. So I hope you've enjoyed the video, and well, soon, guys, I'm going to be releasing a Igniter video. I am going to jump on that little bandwagon that everyone's been releasing, but I feel there are particular end boards that I think are more possible to end on than some of them have insane interruptions, like 12 plus. I think one reached 20. I think one reached 20 interruptions. And as amazing as that is, it's not going to be your average game state. So I'm going to show you what I think is the best version for like the average player and the average game state, I guess, and then we can go from there. But either way, thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.